My cheating wife had led me to this moment, bat in hand, crouched behind the hedge, as I waited for her lover to arrive. The weight of betrayal burned hotter than the cold night air, every second dragging on as the headlights of his car approached. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming the life I'd built, the dignity she'd shattered, and making him feel the pain I carried. Tonight, justice wasn't just a concept, it was personal. Shadows of betrayal. The chill of the night crept into my bones as I crouched behind the hedge, baseball bat in hand. The driveway stretched before me, bathed in faint moonlight. My grip tightened on the smooth handle, the weight a physical reminder of the rage simmering inside me. I wasn't a violent man, or at least I hadn't been before tonight, but betrayal has a way of changing a person. This wasn't just anger, it was justice. The sound of tires crunching on gravel pulled me from my thoughts. A sleek silver car rolled into the driveway, its headlights cutting through the darkness like a blade. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as the car door opened. This was it, my moment of reckoning. But to understand how I got here, you need to hear the whole story. 6 months ago, I would have laughed if someone told me my wife could betray me. Sophia and I had been married for over a decade. We were the perfect team, or so I thought. She was a brilliant gallery director, moving in elite circles of the art world. I worked in tech, managing a successful team of engineers. Together we built a life most people envied. But cracks began to show in our picture-perfect life. At first it was the late nights at work. Sophia would breeze in hours after dinner, claiming the gallery needed her to oversee some last-minute installation. Then came the business trips, short, impromptu getaways to Paris or Rome for networking. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But the distance between us grew, and the doubts became impossible to ignore. One evening, everything changed. Sophia had left her phone on the counter while she showered. A message lit up the screen. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Same place as before?" My chest tightened as I read those words. I knew deep down what they meant, but part of me refused to accept it. I needed proof. I started small, checking her emails and calendar when she wasn't home. A name kept appearing. Lucas. He was an art dealer, someone she claimed was just a colleague. But the private investigator I hired painted a very different picture. Photos, hotel receipts, even restaurant bookings, it was all there. My wife, the woman I had built a life with, was living a double life with Lucas. Anger burned through me, but it wasn't just rage, it was humiliation. Lucas wasn't just stealing my wife. He was invading my world, my sanctuary. He came to our home when I was at work, parked his car in my driveway, and made himself comfortable in the life I had built. The audacity of it made my blood boil. The night of the confrontation, I felt no hesitation. I waited in the shadows, baseball bat hidden behind my back, as Lucas's car pulled into the driveway. The headlights cut through the darkness, and my grip tightened. The engine stopped, and the car door creaked open. Lucas stepped out, his phone pressed to his ear, his confident smirk igniting the fury inside me. "Hey," he started, but he didn't get the chance to finish. I stepped out of the shadows, the bat swinging with a force I didn't know I had. The impact sent him staggering, his phone clattering to the ground. "You thought you could just walk into my life and take what's mine?" I growled. He tried to back away, hands raised in a pathetic attempt to shield himself. But I was relentless. Another swing connected with his leg, dropping him to the ground. He writhed in pain, gasping for air as I loomed over him. "This is for every lie," I said, my voice cold. "Every stolen moment." The final blow landed on his hand, the same hand he'd used to caress my wife. His scream echoed into the night. When it was over, I dropped the bat and stared down at him. He was broken, his confidence shattered. "Stay away from her. Stay away from me," I said, my voice low but firm. Then I turned and walked into the house, leaving him to crawl back to whatever hole he came from. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. Sophia sat on the couch, scrolling absent-mindedly on her phone. When I walked in, her head snapped up, her expression shifting from surprise to something unreadable. "You're home early," she said, her voice forced and casual. I tossed an envelope onto the coffee table, its contents spilling out. Photos of her and Lucas, receipts from their hotel trysts, and a printout of that damning text message. "What's this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Open it, I said, my tone sharp. Her hands shook as she flipped through the evidence. The color drained from her face. I can explain, she stammered. Explain? I said, my voice rising. Explain how you lied to me? How you betrayed me over and over again? Tears welled in her eyes, but they didn't soften my fury. She tried to blame her actions on loneliness, on my long hours at work, but I wasn't having it. You didn't fall into another man's bed, Sophia. You made a choice, over and over again. She sobbed, begging me to give her another chance, to try counseling, to fix what was broken. But I couldn't. You killed us the moment you chose him, I said, turning away. The days that followed were an exhausting blur of legal proceedings and emotional upheaval. Every action felt like tearing away another piece of a life I had meticulously built. The first step was filing for divorce. The process was as cold and unfeeling as the betrayal that had led to it. Standing in the courthouse with the paperwork in hand, I felt a strange combination of dread and liberation. This was the end of the life I had known, a life I had invested over a decade into, but it was also the beginning of something new, even if that newness felt like a gaping void at the time. Sophia's reaction to the divorce filing was predictably dramatic. She called me incessantly, leaving voicemails that swung wildly between tearful apologies and angry outbursts. At first I listened to them, each word chipping away at my resolve. But as the days passed, I realized her pleas weren't about saving our relationship. They were about her losing control. Sophia had always been the type to command attention and bend situations to her will. The fact that I was walking away, refusing to play the role she had assigned me, was something she couldn't stomach. The legal battle that ensued was messy. Sophia, despite her apologies, fought tooth and nail for every scrap she could claim. The house, our shared assets, even the car, everything became a battleground. At first, her tactics stung, reopening wounds I had barely begun to close. But as the weeks dragged on, I realized that her desperation wasn't a reflection of love or remorse. It was a reflection of her own unraveling. She was clinging to the remnants of a life she had destroyed, trying to salvage her image and her sense of control. Selling the house was one of the hardest parts. That home had been more than just a building. It had been a testament to our shared dreams and successes. Every room held memories, some good, some now tainted. Packing up my belongings was like reliving the past in painful flashes. The laughter that once filled the living room, the quiet mornings we spent sipping coffee in the kitchen, the arguments that had foreshadowed the eventual collapse. When I handed over the keys to the new owners, it felt like closing the door on an entire chapter of my life. I moved into a small apartment on the other side of the city, far from the memories and the ghost of a life I no longer wanted to inhabit. Meanwhile, Lucas's world was falling apart as well. Whispers of his affair with Sophia spread quickly through the art community. The scandal was like wildfire, consuming his once polished reputation. Clients began to distance themselves, unwilling to associate with someone whose name had become synonymous with betrayal. The art world, as glamorous as it seems, is a tightly knit network where reputation is everything. Lucas's charm and connections had once been his greatest assets, but now they were liabilities. Invitations to events dried up, deals fell through, and his name became a cautionary tale whispered in galleries and auction houses. Sophia didn't fare much better. Her position as a gallery director had been her pride and joy, a role she had worked tirelessly to attain. But in a world where personal and professional lives often overlap, the scandal proved too much to ignore. Her colleagues, once her allies, began to distance themselves. The board of the gallery, faced with mounting pressure from patrons and donors, quietly suggested that she step down. The resignation was framed as personal reasons, but everyone knew the truth. Sophia went from being a respected figure in the art world to a pariah almost overnight. Despite everything, I didn't feel joy in their downfall. Watching their lives crumble brought no real satisfaction, only a muted sense of justice. They had made their choices and now they were living with the consequences. But their pain didn't erase mine. The betrayal had left a scar, one that wouldn't heal quickly. Rebuilding my life was a slow, often painful process. The first few weeks in my new apartment were suffocating. The walls felt too close, the silence too loud. I threw myself into work, taking on extra projects and staying late at the office to avoid going home to the emptiness. Friends reached out, offering support and invitations to dinners or outings, but I found it hard to accept. It wasn't that I didn't appreciate their kindness. I just didn't know how to explain the storm inside me. Therapy became a lifeline. Sitting across from a stranger and laying bare my pain felt awkward at first, but over time, it became a space where I could untangle the mess in my head. My therapist helped me see that the betrayal wasn't a reflection of my worth, but a reflection of Sophia's choices. That realization was both freeing and infuriating. I had spent so much time blaming myself, wondering what I had done wrong, what I could have done differently. But the truth was, the fault lay with her. Slowly, I began to reclaim pieces of myself. I picked up photography, a hobby I had long abandoned in the hustle of life. Capturing the world through a lens became a way to see beauty again, even in the smallest things. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping with after-school programs for kids. Their energy and innocence were a stark contrast to the cynicism I'd been drowning in, and their laughter reminded me that not all joy was fleeting. One day, while sorting through old photos, I stumbled across an album from a trip Sophia and I had taken to Santorini years ago. The images felt like relics from another lifetime. As I flipped through them, I didn't feel the sharp pang of loss I had expected. Instead, there was a quiet acceptance. That chapter of my life was over, but it had shaped me into who I was now. And who I was now was stronger, wiser, and more resilient. Lucas's downfall was swift and brutal. Unable to secure new clients, he was forced to sell his gallery and retreat from the art scene altogether. The man who had once been so confident and untouchable was now a shadow of himself. I heard through mutual acquaintances that he had moved abroad, hoping to start over where his name wasn't tarnished. I didn't wish him ill, but I couldn't muster sympathy either. He had played a role in destroying my life, and now he was reaping what he had sown. Sophia's attempts to reach out to me continued for months. She sent long, apologetic emails, left tearful voicemails, and even showed up at my office once. Each time I ignored her. Responding would have only reopened wounds that were finally starting to close. Her words, no matter how sincere they sounded, couldn't undo the damage she had done. Forgiveness, if it ever came, would be for my own peace, not for her absolution. As time passed, the anger and bitterness began to fade, replaced by something softer: hope. I found joy in small things: a sunrise over the ocean, the smell of fresh coffee in the morning, the laughter of new friends I'd made along the way. Moving to the coastal town had been the right decision. The tranquility of the sea, the slower pace of life, and the distance from the chaos of the city gave me the space I needed to heal. One evening, as I stood on the shore watching the sun dip below the horizon, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Betrayal had broken me, yes, but it had also forced me to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, I had found strength I didn't know I possessed. The scars remained, but they were a testament to my survival, not a mark of defeat. For the first time in a long time, I felt like the author of my own story again. And this time, I was determined to write a happier ending. That concludes this story. Let me know what you think about this and put it in the comments. Make sure to consider watching the next unbelievable and captivating story.